Hi, good morning. Today is studio tip number 2. I'm going to talk about flow in the studio and how I move things around, and the direction everything moves is important because you want to start near the wheel and end near the kiln. So first, let's look at the different wear boards that I've used over the years to move things around. When I first started, uh, 13 or so years ago, and I was redoing my studio, I had some drywall left over, so of course I used that. So this is 13 years old. It's just a piece of drywall, and I put painter's tape around the edge because it wouldn't flake off on the edges. But this stuff is going in the garbage now because it's been around a long time. They're kind of worn out, so that's gonna go away. I now use cement backer board. It's meant for construction, like behind tiles in the shower. It keeps moisture out. So I really like them a lot. They're thin, they're light. You can wedge your clay on them. I always wedge my clay on one of these. I use them to move stuff around. I use them on my cart when I move things around, because if it's just the cart and you're putting stuff on it, it gets really dirty and it's harder to clean. These are much easier to clean. One side does have a pattern on it, so you can't really put really wet stuff on it, or else the pattern will show up on the bottom. But the other side is good to go. And when you're sorry about that. When you're cleaning them, it's always good to just whenever you're cleaning anything, you want to wet it first, because you don't want the dust to fly around. You don't want to just scrape it off, because then the dust gets everywhere. So I just wet it, and then I use a rib to get the bigger chunks off, and that way you're not moving dry particles around, you're moving wet particles, and wet particles don't get suspended in the air. So that's that. And then I have just little boards like this, leftover lumber. I use these when I teach classes and I have students that just throw a few pieces. I let their stuff get to a leather hard stage, and then I put a plastic down on it so that there's plastic on the bottom, and then I wrap it up really tight, and then it'll be okay for them to trim a week later. I wrap it up really tight, like sometimes one of these and then a garbage bag or another bag on top, just to make sure it doesn't dry out too much. And then these boards also are just leftover lumber from when I did my floor upstairs. These are great for rolling slabs on, nice and light and thin. There's a dirty spot, so we'll clean that up before the dust gets everywhere. Okay, so what else can I say about boards? Oh, these boards, I can't say enough about them. That's the cement backer boards. You can buy a whole sheet at Rona. I think it was less than $100. I can't even remember what I paid, but and they'll cut it up for you in different sizes. And it's easy for them to cut. They just use X-Acto knife and it snaps just like drywall. So now I'm going to talk about flow in the studio. So there is my studio door with an awesome sign that my sister made for me. My sister is an awesome quilter. And over here is all my clay piled up. So I don't need one right now, but I would grab a box of clay, come in, put on my shoes. Pottery shoes always stay in the studio. They never get worn out to the house. Okay, so here's my cement backer board that I talked about before. I'm just going to put this on a tripod. So I would cut a chunk of clay, weigh out what I need, wedge it, put it on the board, pick up my board. I'm going to turn my camera because I have to be able to carry this like a waitress and my camera. Okay, so now I'm going to bring my board over here and put it down here. Okay, all right, so then, I would throw stuff on the wheel, put my finished pieces on my cart, take my cart, move it over here, pile it up on these racks, my finished pieces that are drying, another rack over here. See, there's some students' work that's all wrapped up and ready for them to trim. Okay, let's pretend there's a bunch of pieces here and they're dry and ready for trimming. Now I'm going to bring them over here. I trim on this kick wheel because I like it. It's quiet. All my wheels are pretty well quiet except the beast in the corner. Yeah, and it's easier to clean up. Oh, and so I pile some stuff here. If I have lots of stuff, I have this old desk that I bought at Habitat for Humanity. And then I bought a wooden dowel and just screwed it in on the bottom so I could stand up all my bats. Oh, and I want to talk about this too. My tiles, I keep in this container. And I don't clean my tiles in between. I clean them, I leave them like this. And I clean them as I use them. So I put this on the wheel, I'm going to scrape it off and clean it. But all the dry stuff as it dries falls off in the bottom. And then you can just empty this. So that works well. And then this has wheels. This has wheels, so if I'm trimming over here and I got a lot of stuff, I fill up this table and I move it over here like this, corner myself in over there, so I have stuff on there, stuff on here, and then sometimes my cart is sitting here with stuff on it. Okay, so let's pretend there's a bunch of pieces here that I've trimmed and they're all sitting around on here. I then put them on my cart and I move my cart over here to my table. I want to talk about this table. It's it is an awesome table. I am so lucky. It's a shuffleboard table that the previous owners left in the house. So a friend of mine who's a woodworker took all the wood, like the good wood that was on the shuffleboard table, and then he put this plywood top on here for me. And then in the back there was a gap. So I just I don't know if you can see. I extended the table just by screwing boards into the top so I could put all my stuff on the back edge without stuff falling behind all the time. You know, you're always thinking about ways to make things better. Okay, so my imaginary pieces here are all trimmed. So if I need to add handles, you know, I put a bucket of water on the table, I pull some handles. I use one of these boards. These boards that we talked about before, these thin little plywood boards. I use them to lay my handles on. What else? Let me think and I'll be back. Okay, so my imaginary pieces have been put on the table, handles added, decorated, carved into, underglaze, whatever I'm doing, I do on this table. Okay, and then my pieces go over here to dry. Everything goes over here to dry. Yep, and then they get loaded in the kiln from there. Okay, and then they're fired and then unloaded and onto my cart again. And then back onto the big table. Glazed, back on the shelves or the cart, and then back in the kiln. Oh, another way I use my boards is to keep my glazes up, so it's a more comfortable way to glaze instead of having to bend down so far. And another little one over here. And this table over here is, you know, more glazes underneath. My slab roller. This is my recycled clay. I keep it next to the kiln. You know, scraps that didn't work out. Lots of, you know, stuff that didn't work. So I keep it in here and it dries out fast. And then I'm going to wheel it out because I don't have to lift it. I'm going to wheel it out, and once it's dried out, I break it all up and I put it in here. So all my dirty throw water and stuff goes in there, and once that is dried out, I break it up, throw it in there, and then when it's ready to recycle, I have on wheels again, I have some plaster boards that I just made with pizza boxes and stuff, so I pile all my recycle on there, and then it gets wheeled over to the pug mill, which is next to my wheel in the other room. And then I have also on my reclaimed clay in these bins, also on wheels. That I like reclaimed clay a lot. I love using reclaimed clay because I mix it all together, all different colors. And that's that. Goes in there. Oops, the lid. Okay, so that is studio tip number 2 with a little addition on the end. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Again, you can see my tips on my website. Check my profile, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.